This is very interesting. We have the first approval rating for President Joe Biden. It's 63%. This is the highest approval rating at any time for any president dating back 12 years to 2009. To find an approval rating for a president higher than Joe Biden's current approval rating of 63%, you have to go all the way back to 2009, Barack Obama's first year in the White House, when Obama hit 69% approval. Note that Donald Trump never got to even 50% approval, even one time during his entire presidency. Now, there's a couple different things going on here. There is such a dramatic shift in COVID policy, which is one of the top issues for most Americans right now. From Trump, who couldn't have failed more miserably, to Biden, who's at least trying. And we'll see what degree of success he has. I think COVID explains a lot of the shift to a high approval rating for Joe Biden. In addition, presidents often have their best approval ratings at the very beginning, before they've done things that their political opponents can say are bad, or done things that are actually bad. George W. Bush was different in that way. George W. Bush's approval rating skyrocketing, I think to 88% after 9/11, which was not which was a bit of a ways in, months in to George W. Bush's presidency. But typically, this is when January, February, March of their first term. This is when presidents have their highest approval. So it's not totally shocking that Biden's doing okay now. The fact that he's at 63% is quite interesting. We've not seen an approval that high for a president in 12 years. Now, being realistic, Biden probably settles below 63%. If he can really turn the pandemic around in the next 4 to 6 months, maybe he could get to 68. Maybe he could get to 70. Remember that right now, about 30% of this country is completely wackadoo. OK, and it's very hard for me to imagine that Biden's ceiling is much higher than 70 or 72% anyway. So maybe a successful Biden can peak at 67, 68, maybe 70. And a successful Biden would probably settle somewhere around the mid 50s if he does well. If he does as poorly as Trump, then you'd expect to see him in the high 30s, low 40s, the way that Donald Trump does. The real test for Biden will be these next 3 to 6 months. What happens with the virus? What happens with vaccination? We are up now up to 1.25 million vaccinations a day, which is great. And what happens when unemployment expires for a lot of people? There are some major tests coming for Joe Biden, but these early numbers, very, very interesting to see. And at least to the degree that a hyperpolarized country can be united behind what a president is doing, 63% approval and 69% approval of COVID so far in this first week. It is significant. To pretend it's not would be dismissive of something that is significant. This is when you expect to see presidents with some of their higher approvals. Let's check in again about this in 4 to 6 weeks. Let's take a quick break. Make sure you're following the show on Instagram at David Pakman Show. And while you're there, follow me on Instagram at david.pakman. I want to take a second to tell you about one of our sponsors, S&H Masks. S&H Masks has everything you need when it comes to face masks and other protective gear for COVID-19, and they're giving my audience 20% off. S&H Masks is the company that I've personally been going to for face masks. I love and trust the products they sell, and that's actually why I reached out to them about being a sponsor. I've tried tons of different face masks this year, like many of you, and I still have not found a mask that is more comfortable or easier to breathe in than the washable cotton masks that they sell. It's made of a silky, lightweight cloth that feels great on the skin, has a convenient adjustable strap. They also have disposable cloth masks, which are really comfortable, as well as all of the other gear like face shields, alcohol wipes, no-touch infrared thermometers. And all of their prices are very reasonable. I also love S&H masks because they've donated over 60,000 masks to healthcare institutions. They're an excellent company. Shipping is just $5 and shipping is free on orders over $150. You can get there by going to davidpakman.com/mask. The link is under this video, and you can save 20% on everything in their store when you use the coupon code DAVID.